Hey guys, Dave West here. In this video, I want to talk about how to stay up on foil longer when you're proning in the surf. And this counts for SUP or prone board. And first and foremost, I want to get across that you do not have to be super duper fit in order to do this. There are other factors outside of that that can get you staying up for, it might be 3 minutes for you, it might be 5, it might be 20, it might be an hour. And I think these principles apply whatever your goal is. But I will say, I'm pretty fit at pumping, but I'm definitely not one of the fittest, and I can stay on foil for quite a long time by implementing these strategies and having this knowledge base. I think you can get there before you know it. So let's dive in. So the first thing is very obvious. I'm going to talk about gear choice. Riding a big enough foil that you can pump, and also, and this is really important, a foil that you can maneuver.
I have invented a maneuver.
Some of the older foils are really glidey, and even things like the 1075, say with code. I'll talk about code foils because that's what I'm on now, and that's what I'm riding, so I want to compare that to what I'm doing now. And if I wanted to stay on foil for a long time, I'm not going to use the 1075 personally. Some people will, but I don't it's not maneuverable enough in my opinion to enjoy being on foil for that long. So, I can be on foil for 15, 20, 25 minutes, and I get a bit bored if I can only go sort of straight. I like to be able to do a few turns here and there, spice it up a bit. And also it means that when you want to make a sudden decision change, you're not losing tons of speed because that wingspan will slow you down. So my choice and my setup at the moment, when I want to be pumping around in the surf for longer periods and I'm not out there to performance foil, I will use the 1130S, and I use the 150 AR or the 142 AR tail, and I run the medium fuse on an 80 centimeter mast and my cruiser. I really like this setup because yes, it is slow, but I can pump into a headwind, and that's a big factor. And it's playful enough that I can still have fun. I can get away with all sorts of mistakes. It's pretty incredible what you can get away with. It breaches really nicely, and when I say really nicely, like excellently. And they're things that keep you on foil. Being able to breach, being able to turn quickly when you need to, and being easy to pump so that you can keep your heart rate down. And we're going to talk about that later on. Board choice, the bigger the board, usually the harder it is to stay on foil for longer. I tend to find if I'm on my SUP board, I lose probably 20% of my time, but I'm immediately working harder, my heart rate's higher, my legs get more tired. Whereas on the small prone board, I can generally go for about half an hour, and I generally only come down because I've made a mistake, not because I'm actually tired. So prone board's the way to go if you want to go for length, but absolutely staying up on the SUP. I've done about 18 minutes on the SUP in the surf, whereas I've done 35 minutes on prone board. I still haven't cracked the hour, but we'll get there. So in summary, just use a big foil that is maneuverable and still has enough range. You don't want a big, slow, horrible foil that doesn't have any glide. And that's the other component, is the more glide it has, the easier it'll be once you're on the wave to relax. So conditions, the ideal conditions to stay up on foil for a long time is a regular swell. So usually shorter period, 8, 9, 10, 12 second period. That just means it's a frequent swell usually. There's not huge lulls. You get a 20-second period swell and there's too big a lulls. There's no point. So a day after a really windy day is epic for staying on foil for a long time. And if there's ground swell mixed in with that, that is even better. In regards to the wind to me is the biggest determining factor whether or not you can stay on foil. Waves are secondary to that. A strong headwind, and by that I mean onshore wind, because that would be pumping out, would be headwind. So I'll talk in better terms, be less stupid. Onshore wind is the worst for staying on foil for a long time. And the stronger the wind is, the worse it is. So say if it's 5 knots, I can probably stay up for 20, 25 minutes. If it's 10 knots, 5 to 8 minutes max. well, depending on a few things, but it just destroys you and it jacks your heart rate up, and they're not the conditions to do it. So then the obvious question is, well, isn't offshore wind better? And the answer is generally no. A light offshore wind, say 5 knots, is excellent. That's probably the ideal. When it starts to get stronger, what it means is, yes, you can pump back out, but when you go to turn onto the wave, sometimes you'll stall, and it'll often mean if the swell's a bit weak, you might have to pump and work to stay on the swell. So in my opinion, anywhere from 5 knots offshore to 5 knots onshore, that's the ideal range. And ideally 0 knots is great, except you get that weird glassy thing and then you can't see how high you are on the mast. But that's beside the point. So the wind is really the deciding factor. If it's really onshore, I ride a small foil because I know I'm not going to be able to pump and link that much, and I try and just stay up for 2-3 waves. But if it's a little bit offshore, light winds, 5 knots, and there's consistent waves, the big foil goes on and I try and stay up for as long as I can. So at the beginning of this, I made a claim that general fitness is not the most important factor, and I still think that's the case. A lot of people that don't stay up for very long, it's usually it's a strategic error. So they catch a wave and I see them pump past 2-3 waves that they could have caught and had a rest, but they don't, they just keep pumping out the back. And learning to utilize what's available to you, close to you, is probably one of the best lessons that you could take from this video. Sometimes you'll see a wave coming and then you'll see a set, say, 150 meters out the back. And you can make the choice to go, oh, I'll get to that set and I'll just pump there. But what happens is your heart rate jacks up, and by that point, you're now trying to get your heart rate back down. Whereas what you could have done, and this is what I will often do, is there'll be a little wave in between it. It might just be a little turn, and you might only be on it for 3 to 5 seconds. But what it does is it gives you a little break, and it means that when you come off that wave, you've had a little less exertion that you've had to apply, and that set is now closer. Now you could say, well, that other wave brought you back in closer, and so you sort of, you've got the same issue. But that's not really the way it works, because when you come off a wave, you glide and you have speed. You don't have to create the speed. And creating speed with your legs is the worst thing you want to be doing when you're trying to stay up for a long time. You want to be maintaining speed. So you want to come off with speed and only be working to maintain it. And that's why these little boosts that you can get when you hit a wave and you come off and you go straight back out the back, they're so important to help you stay on foil for longer. They also so say you're pumping out, your heart rate's starting to climb, we're at 120, we're at 130, oh, you get that little wave, it's only 3 to 5 seconds. It means your heart rate might stabilize at 120. Then you start pumping back out and your heart rate starts to build back up. Oh, but you got another little bump. Then your heart rate starts to come back down a little bit, and it can sort of stay in a maintainable range. Versus if you just pump straight out the back to the biggest wave you see, your heart rate will just climb and climb and climb and climb and climb and climb. And say you're at 160 by the time you get to the wave. By the time you get onto that wave, you have to stay on that set wave for as long as possible to get your heart rate to come back down. And that's not the ideal. What you want to be doing is sort of springboarding between little sections, little waves. And that is actually, it's like 3-4 pumps, wave. 5-6 pumps, wave. 3-4 pumps, wave. That is how you stay on foil for as long as possible. The only time that I'll actually sort of just aim for the one at the back is when I'm sort of trying to performance surf. It's not when I'm trying to stay on foil. Second part of that is sometimes when you head out the back, you're reducing options. So when you're in the shallows, you're guaranteed to have some sort of option in that next sort of 2 minutes, let's say. Or let's say leave in a minute. So let's say that I can comfortably pump around for a minute. Let's say you're one of those people. As long as you stay in the shallows, there's gonna be something available in that minute in the shallows. Whereas if you pump straight out the back, you need to be hoping for a set. You'll often see that when I am staying off foil, I'm gauging what's going on at the back and what's happening on the inside. And if you see nothing at the back, stay on the inside. You will have way more options, and that is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make. They just go, poof, I'm gonna head out the back, and all you're doing is limiting your options, and the less options you have, the more likely you are to get tired and come off. The other part of that is you need to not be afraid of the shallows. You will see in this footage, I'm getting pretty close to some rocks, and that's par for the course. If you want to stay on foil in these sort of lighter days, this is a fairly small surf. These sort of days, you're gonna have to be in the shallows, whether that's sand bottom or rock bottom. You're gonna have to risk hitting the bottom. But generally, if the wave's big enough that you could have paddled into it, you know, at the beginning, it's definitely deep enough. The waves are big enough that you can foil through those sections. So, yeah, you gotta embrace the shallows and stay near the shallows when you don't see anything happening out the back that's gonna give you an opportunity to have a rest. Another tip is to don't surf the wave. And I know that sounds kind of boring, but if you wanna stay on foil, you need to just relax when you get onto a wave. Stand as straight as you can, your stance as narrow as you can make it, and just stand there and rest. Don't be trying to turn into Adam Bennett's when you're trying to stay on foil. Just chill. This is a different thing you're going for. So managing swell directions. Some of the best places to be able to stay on foil is about the wave setup and having sort of a section A and a section B that you can bounce between. If you only have a section A, that's fine, but it often means that, so say as you come down a point break, so we'll just call this it only has a section A. As you come down the point break, you're always burning off energy trying to come off that wave, turn, and then head back out. And that turning is shaving off speed and makes you work a lot harder. The best setup, which is what you see here in this video, is I have an A and a B section, and I bounce from A to B, from B to A as I need. I can stay on either, or every now and then there'll be a set that sort of has a direction that takes me across to the next one, and vice versa. That's the best setup you can find, and it also means that you've almost always got an exit. Some of the worst times to try and stay on foil for a long time is just straight beachies. A straight beachie is crap for trying to stay on foil, and it makes life really hard. You're always trying to escape, you know, a steep wave, and there isn't these sections that you can bounce between unless there's a bank there and a bank there. So when it's just a straight beachy, I don't even bother personally. You know, each to their own, but I don't bother. So yeah, find a spot that has sort of two sections that you can bounce between, and that's gonna make life a lot easier for you. On the exit point is plan your exit. So often I see people ride the wave and they try and exit when it's almost like an uphill to get over the shoulder, and that's a big mistake. You wanna be exiting that wave almost from a bottom turn is the best. That's when you get tons of speed, but absolutely with a lot of speed. Probably exit sooner than you think. The other scenario is exit later than you think. And it's sort of, I see people either, they sort of land in between the two and it's just like a fat part of the wave and it's not that useful. So I'll either exit when it's literally just about to break on me, or I'm exiting as it's peeling down the line and I've got a lot of good speed. You'll often see that I look out the back and I check what's gonna happen, and that helps me decide, am I gonna stay on this thing and ride it until it's just about to close out on me, or am I gonna use this speed to get out to something better out the back? And that's often the calculation that you need to make on the fly, and all of this becomes very instinctual. One of the other tips, and one of the things I see people do that doesn't help, is they miss time when to turn onto the wave when it's a big soft burgery thing out the back. So a wave will be coming in and I will see people and they'll try and turn up too high. But you've got to remember, the further out the wave is, the faster it moves. And often they just don't, like, especially this setup that I'm riding here, they don't always present you with the best shape. But what you essentially, you need to do, what you need to learn to do, is to time when you should run parallel to the wave. So by that I mean waves coming, you're pumping out this way. As you get close to the wave, I see a lot of people, they wait too long and they'll turn as the wave comes and they sort of miss it. And because you're going to lose speed from that turn unless, you know, it's a really peaky wave. So what I would encourage people to do, this really helps, is as you come up to the wave, you see the wave starting to come to you, you go parallel to the wave. And that means you can just do a little quick turn and it will catch you. That's really important, and it's something you learn from downwinding. Is how to read certain bumps. So undergirding sort of all this activity is obviously your pump. Now, teaching people to pump, I still think is really hard, and it's so instinctual, and it's just something you have to learn over time. But shuffling your feet is really important when you're trying to stay on foil. One is to pump efficiently. So pumping with a narrower stance is going to help your legs to burn out equally. I don't really get a sore back leg anymore. I used to, like 2 years ago, and now because my stance is more balanced, I don't. It means I'm using both my legs, and you're using your upper body a lot to create that uplift. So what I often see is people have a bit of a pump that makes the board sort of go like this rather than this. You want it to be sort of an aggressive up and then a glide down, aggressive up and a glide down. But often you see people doing this. And if you have an inefficient pump, staying on foil is going to be so much harder because you're working so much harder. You're not working the foil efficiently. And that will make you think, I will never be able to stay on foil a long time because I'm not fit enough. But it's not the case. It's actually your pump technique that is making you fatigue and get your heart rate up quicker than it would if you had a better pump technique. So that's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's very true. If I still go for a sprint, I will have a fucking asthma attack within 2 minutes, but I can stay on foil for a long time because I'm using these strategies of efficiency and managing speed to help me stay on foil for longer. So let me summarize as quickly as I can. Pick the right foil, make sure there's not shitloads of wind, manage your speed, make sure you gain speed from the wave that you're on in order to only be maintaining speed rather than building speed when you're pumping. Learn to pump better. Don't pump out too far, stay in the shallows, and I can't remember what else we said. But anyway, look, I hope that helps. I haven't made a lot of tutorials lately. For anyone who's curious about what's going on in my life, I've gotten back from Hawaii recently, playing a bit of catch up, and there's a bit of a shift in my life where I'm going to be more focused on work rather than foiling, which it doesn't suck. It's just a change of pace. I'm opening up my own real estate office over the next 2 years. I'm going to build up that business so I won't have as much time as I've had to foil. I hope those little tidbits help. So thanks guys, bye.